Hey guys, it's Lydia here, and for today's video I'm going to be talking about some tips and tricks for volume in your braids, your buns, and twists. Now I love volume, obviously. All my braids, I always pull them apart. I always love to tease my buns, make them big. I pull apart twists. I just love doing it. Before we get into each individual thing, I just want to say there are a few things that will make your hair have more volume or more hold just naturally. If your hair is texturized already, whether you have dry shampoo or texture spray, hairspray, sea salt spray, mousse, whatever it is, if you have some hold or texture in your hair already, it's going to be more voluminous and it's going to help hold braids or twists or buns better. Also, if you have something like curls or second day, third day hair, that's going to add more hold because it already has that grit to it. So those are a few ways that you can just get volume in your braids, buns, or twists without using any of the other things I'm about to tell you. But now let's start off with some braids. So the first trick I want to tell you is to not pull apart the braid at the very end, instead pull it apart in the middle. This is especially good for anyone that has long hair, and I especially love this trick for fishtail braids because you have more lengths of the braid to pull apart. Basically what you're going to do is you're going to braid about halfway down your hair and then take a quick break and you're going to pull apart the braid. Now I would say the easiest way to pull it apart is to pull just like on little hairs. So pull from the middle, pull from the outside, pull from the inside until it gets as big as you want. You can go to the next one, pull on the outside, pull the inside, and you want to keep changing your grip, because if you don't, you might just pull and then make a loop. So say you pull it and then, oh dear, there's a loop there. So you need to make sure to always be changing your grip, pulling on different parts of your length. Also, another way to pull it apart is to kind of rub the braid like this with your fingers, and that will kind of fan it out and you won't have any loops when you're doing that. I like this one if your hair's thinner, so if you have less hair to pull out, you can kind of just like fan it out, because doing this is going to kind of flatten out the hair. So that's what you want to do. But if your hair's thicker, you can just pull on it and it'll be fine. And so then once you pull it apart, your ends might be a lot shorter now, but you can just braid as far as you want to and then pull apart the rest as well. There you go. You're going to start by just braiding all the way down. So then once you've gotten as far as you want to, just secure it at the end with an elastic. And if you're going to be braiding all the way down to the ends of your hair, I'd recommend leaving a little bit more hair than you think you need, because when you pull it apart, it's going to use up some of those ends and you don't want pieces of hair falling out of the braid. So then all you're going to do is just go onto each side of the braid and just pull on it. And you can pull from the middle or from the sides and just go up and down the braid and pull on it. This is not going to get as much volume, and I especially like it if the braid is smaller, so it doesn't have to be like huge, just a little bit different, you know? And there you go. And this method also sometimes has more flyaways. As you can see, there's flyaways up and down the hair. So, like, I mean, pulling apart your braid in general can bring out those flyaways no matter what you do, but I think this method especially, because you're being a little more rough, it can make the braids look a little bit more fuzzy, have more flyaways sticking out, and just it doesn't look as good. But this is definitely one, if I'm in a hurry, I'll just do this and it's still really cute. And I really think there's a different pull apart method for each braid I do. So like, for instance, the rope braid, you're going to start by braiding all the way down or as far as you'd like and secure it with an elastic. Again, if you are planning on braiding it all the way down, leave a few inches more than you need to, or not a few inches, maybe like 1 inch more than you need to, because when you pull it apart, it's going to use up some of those ends. And for the rope braid, you should always secure it with an elastic, because I feel like when you use a bobby pin or your hand, something that it doesn't have as tight a grip, it doesn't turn out as well. For some reason, rope braids need to be a little more taut when you pull them apart. So then all you're going to do is just take a small section from your twist or your rope and just pull on it and kind of just mess it up. Like these braids, you can't really get them perfect because they're like twists, but just pull on little pieces to really make it fluffy, and that's kind of the key here, really for most twists, but for rope braids especially, because if you're going to do what we did before where you're just like pulling on it and trying to be more gentle, it's not going to really work. So you really have to pull hard and just really go at it. By the way, all of these tips will work if you're going to do like a side braid or something, but since my hair is shorter, it's easier to do in a half updo, so that's why I'm doing it. So for the fishtail braid, when you're doing the braid, you want to actually start by braiding in big sections. So instead of going really small, you actually want to go bigger, because when you pull it apart, it looks a lot better when you do that. Second tip, don't braid all the way down with a fishtail braid. Stop about like a third to a half down your hair and then start pulling it apart. This is especially important if you're doing a half updo or if your hair is really long. And then for this one, I recommend the first method of pulling apart a braid that I showed you earlier, where you just go to each individual link of the braid and pull it apart. And then continue braiding, again making sure to braid bigger sections. And again, like before, don't braid all the way down, leave a few inches more than you think you need because they're going to be used up. And then once you've braided and pulled apart the whole thing, you can secure it at the end with an elastic. And if you want, you can go in and pull it apart one last time just to make sure it's as big as you can get. And there you go. I adore pulled apart fishtail braids. I think they're so beautiful, and this method is just so perfect because it gets it as big as you can get, which is kind of the point of fishtail braids, right? So let's do a French and Dutch braid, shall we? For the Dutch braid, how I recommend doing it is Dutch braiding whatever you need to do. So this is the side of my head. And then you're going to do the first method that I showed you. So just go to each individual link and pull it apart. And no matter what Dutch braid I'm doing, this is always the method I go for, because you're holding it with your hands, so it adds slack so you can pull it apart pretty easily. And Dutch braids don't normally have like too many links, so it's not going to take too long. Then once you pull it apart, you can braid it all the way down or secure it with an elastic there, whatever style you're doing. And then once you've secured it with an elastic, then you can go back in and pull it apart, and that will get the best look. Also, for all these braids, I would actually recommend, as you're braiding tightly, because if you braid too loose, you can encourage flyaways or those loops we were talking about, and it just isn't going to look as good. If you braid tighter, you'll get these really cool arcs as you're going, as opposed to braiding loosely. It'll just kind of look like your braid is falling out. And there you go, a beautiful pulled apart Dutch braid. So then for a French braid, it's a little bit trickier because normally the braid is buried under the hair you're adding in. What I like to do is braid all the way down, and then if I'm going to be continuing on with a regular braid, I'll stop and pull it apart. But if I'm going to be securing it with an elastic right when I end the braid, I'll just secure it with an elastic and then pull it apart. This one is kind of hard to do without a mirror, and I don't have a mirror, so I'm just going to try to blindly show it to you. Let's see if this will work. But basically what you're going to do is you're going to try to find the links of the braid. So in the Dutch braid, it's really easy because it's sitting on top of everything, but for the French braid, it's kind of hidden under all the hair that you're adding over. But just kind of try to feel around, find it. It's easiest to do in a mirror, and then just pull at those links. And that's going to get the best look, because it's still going to be that beautiful kind of romantic, whimsical French braided look, but it's also going to be a little more noticeable, because if you just pull at the hair, you're going to have like loops like this one right here, and it's just not going to look that good. So you want to make sure to go in, try to find those links of the braid and pull only on those. And that's also how you not make it look super 90s. I mean, I know 90s is in, but like not bad 90s to look good 90s. Alright, so I think that's all I have to say about the braids. Let's move on to some twists. So for a twist, the first thing I would recommend is when you're doing a twist to secure it before pulling it apart. So say you're going to pull some hair back from either side, twist it and pin it first, and then pull it apart, just because the twist, like the rope braid, it kind of needs to be held in place really tightly to get the best overall look, or else it'll kind of fall apart and look weird. recommend is, as you can see, it's kind of loose and drooping down. So tighten up the twist and that will already get it looking a little bit better. And then continue on, basically kind of what we did with the rope braid, where you're going to take a small section from the twist and just pull on it. You don't want to go crazy, especially if your twist is a little bit smaller. You just go in there, take small sections and pull them out. And there you go. I can't see it, but I'm sure it looks good. But yeah, there you go. It's definitely a lot bigger, feels a lot bigger. And it just looks really cute, and it's just so much more lived in when you pull it apart than if you just leaved it tight. So I really recommend that. So for the last one, let's talk about some buns. The first thing I'd recommend is when you're pulling your hair into the elastic, and this is true whether you're doing it in a ponytail, in a bun, in a half updo, whatever, when you're pulling your hair into an elastic, don't like comb it back with a brush or a comb. Just use your fingers and that will make it look a little bit more messy, and it's going to add more volume in the end. So then once you've pulled your hair into a bun or whatever, you can pull at the hair around it, or if this is a ponytail you can do that as well, to get a little more just volume all around. So if your hair isn't curled or doesn't have any product in it, which is a great way if you don't want to add any product, I think the easiest way to add volume to your bun is to tease your hair. So there are like a whole bunch of different ways of teasing. I think the easiest and least damaging is with your fingers. So if your hair is super like fine and falls out of everything, I'd recommend using a brush, which I'm going to show you in a second. But if your hair has a little bit of grit to it and you just need a little bit of teasing, your fingers is a great option. So just hold your hair straight up and then go down, basically like bear claw your hair downwards to create a light tease. As you can see, it's nice and fluffy, but it's not damaging to your hair at all. The second way is with a brush. This is going to make a little bit more tangles, but it's not super damaging. If you do it with a comb, it can be a little bit more. So a brush is probably the best way to go if you're looking for the most volume. So you're basically going to do the same thing, where you're going to hold your ponytail straight up and just back comb like so. And once you've got it as fluffy as you want, you can smooth over the surface and then just twist and wrap it into a bun. And you do not want to twist like super tightly. Sometimes you don't even need to twist at all. Like you could totally just take this and wrap it into a bun and it looks beautiful. So just don't go crazy with the twisting because it is not necessary. And then my last tip for buns is to use less bobby pins. When you use more bobby pins, I've noticed that the bun just kind of shrinks down because a whole bunch of pins are like pulling the hair under. So I'd recommend using less bobby pins, maybe one or two. If you have really thick hair, jumbo bobby pins are a great option. So all you're going to do is just go from one side of the bun, stick the pin in, and then on the other side stick another pin in so that they crisscross. And there you go. That is it for today's video, guys. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you learned something, please tell me in the comments below, and tell me in the comments below what video you'd like to see next. And be sure to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe below, because I post hair tutorials every single Monday and fashion videos on Friday. And be sure to share this with a friend who has thin hair or has thick hair or has any kind of hair and loves volume. Alright guys, bye.